Well, welcome to Live with Lacey for Military Appreciation Month. I'm Lacey Langford, the military money expert. I help the military community make, save, and invest money wisely. And I'm so excited you're here. Throughout this month of May, I'm doing a series of events to provide value and show appreciation for the military community, which everybody knows I love a lot. I'm doing live shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday throughout the month where I'm interviewing fun guests like the one that's getting ready to come on about money, life, and entrepreneurship. Every Tuesday, I'm hosting a giveaway. This week, I'm giving away a $100 gift card to Walmart, which you can still register to win. That will definitely help out somebody's grocery budget. And on Thursdays, I'm releasing a how-to video on various topics. Yesterday, I released a video on how to prepare for a military transition. So some quick tips to get everybody started and really thinking about how to prepare for that. You can find out all the latest of my activities for this month if you follow me on Twitter at Finance Lacey or on Facebook and YouTube under the Military Money Expert. Support for this show and my entire Military Appreciation Month celebration comes from Self. Whether you need to establish or rebuild credit from scratch, Self can help you build credit and savings to achieve your dreams. You can learn more at Self.inc. All right, now it's time for my guest. My guest today is Joe Crane. Joe retired from the Marine Corps in 2013 after 24 years of service. No big deal. He was an AH-1W Super Cobra attack helicopter pilot. That's a mouthful. And completed 2 combat flying tours in Iraq. Joe is now an airline pilot, host of the Veteran on the Move podcast, and ambassador for Bunker Labs in Kansas City. So wherever you're watching, clap really, really loud and welcome Joe to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Lacey. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me on the show. I think the last time we met in person was last March at PodFest in Orlando.
Yes.
Right. It was like the last weekend before everything shut down across the whole country.
It really is. You might have been the last person I saw in person.
I know.
And then I got on a flight. Yeah. So it was that we really just got in under the wire on that conference.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's when the world changed.
Yeah, I was actually concerned about being able to make it back home before everything shut down.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. You had further to go. I was just going to North Carolina. I was like, well, I could probably get a car and get back. But yeah, you had a longer haul than I did.
Yep.
Really good point. Some of us could have been trapped.
I know. Little did we know how long the whole thing was going to last.
That's so true. I was like, oh, I'll see you soon. No. Well, I'm so excited you're here. I want to talk military transitions because you have been through it all, especially after 24 years. You haven't not only been through it all, you've witnessed a lot. So I wanted to ask you, what do you wish you would have known before you left the military? Because, you know, we think we know until we go through something. So what are something that you wish you would have maybe known?
Well, I actually had the luxury of transitioning out of the military twice because I was active for 8 and then I got out back in 98 after 8 years of active duty to pursue a career in the airlines. And I did. And I'd only been at Delta Airlines for about 5 months when September 11th happened in 2001. And about a month later, I was back out on the street furloughed. I'd stayed in the reserves the whole time. So I was still flying Cobras in the reserves.
Yeah.
But it wasn't going to be full-time for me, or at least I didn't think it was at the time. I had no idea what we were about to enter into. But I did come back on active duty for a couple 6-month set of orders, eventually transitioned back into the active reserve program in the Marine Corps and stayed on active duty for another 13 or so years. So I ended up retiring from active duty out of the active reserve program and then transitioned out of the Marine Corps a second time after all that. So kind of crazy, you know, the things we wish we had known. I mean, I still remember when I went back on active duty, one of my Marine Corps buddies was like, man, you could actually end up retiring from the Marine Corps after all this is over with. And I'm like, dude, that's like over 12 years from now. That's never gonna happen.
No way.
Yeah. And there 13 years later, boom, I'm retiring from the Marine Corps. So crazy times. But as far as getting out of the military and starting your own business or trying to get into entrepreneurship, which is what we talk about on the Veteran New podcast all the time, I didn't do this. So this is my advice.
Caveat, I didn't do it.
Don't do as I say, not as I do. Ask for help. Get mentors. Start building a team. Don't try to do everything yourself. Coaching, mastermind groups, whatever you need to do, going to conferences, whatever you need to do. And the more of this you can do before you get out, the better. Get that network built up. Don't try to figure it out all on your own, because, and the ironic thing is, a lot of military folks get out and they try to figure it out all on their own, because because they just don't know anybody after they've gotten out, and two, they feel like now that they're free, they can finally start doing what they want to do and apply themselves, which is great, but you can't do it all yourself. And so before I knew it, I was working in my business instead of working on my business, and I was in the weeds and bogged down really quick. And it took me a while to figure out, start looking left and right, hire some VAs, develop some systems and processes to get some of these things off my desk so that I could think freely again.
Yes, you're right. There's like a pivotal point. I can't talk because of the Invisalign. I just got it.
Easy for you to say.
Like a big word. Danger.
Pivotable.
We'll be using that one the rest of the time. But there's a point where you really are, for a long time, you've had to build and figure it out, but then you start to get away from the core of what you are doing. You know, for me, like a financial coach, it's like, now I got all this business stuff I have to learn about social media, marketing, sales, the podcast. And, it takes longer if you're trying to do it yourself. And I think the military community, I know I'm definitely guilty of this, is, we'll muscle through it on our own.
Yep.
It's like, we don't want to put anybody else out. We'll figure it out. Like, we'd rather, inconvenience ourselves than somebody else, for 10 minutes. We'll take, 2 weeks to do something, and instead of calling somebody and be like, hey, how do I do this?
I know. And, there are, in all fairness, there are some things you kind of do need to dive into and figure out yourself and master, or at least get a familiarity. And that way you can say, this is definitely something we need to pursue. But at some point you need to say, okay, how do I turn this over to somebody else? The exploratory thing might be one thing, but like, let's say if you're not a big bookkeeper type, if you're not into taxes and you don't want to be, there's plenty of people out there that love that stuff. Bring them in from the beginning and do it right from the beginning, and just take that off your plate.
That's a really good point. You don't need to get another skill set on something when somebody else loves it way more than you do.
Now the financial planner part, somebody like yourself, you're probably all into that. Yeah. But even so, if you're spending all your time doing your own taxes, you're not doing what you're doing right now, which is your bread and butter.
Right. That's so true. But I also think my personality, I like to understand stuff. I really like to learn, but I've had to balance what you're talking about, having a basic understanding and doing a deep dive. I don't need to be doing a deep dive on podcast editing. I don't want to be an editor. I want to be a podcast host and talk about money. That's what I'm doing. But I do need to understand the editing process. I definitely have a deeper appreciation for my editor because I understand how it all works. It's not something I want to do. But I'm able to then communicate to him what I like, what I dislike, and what I'm looking for, versus him trying to read my mind, because I have a basic understanding of the process, but I don't have a PhD in editing.
Right. Yeah. And you don't need one.
Right. Yes. For sure. I don't need one. I don't want one. And I have a feeling I probably wouldn't achieve that PhD.
I'm sure you could have if you wanted to.
Yes. I'd be like an associate's in editing versus a PhD. But I think that's good that you pointed out that you can get help, that there's all these people, there's mentorship programs. Veterati is huge. Do you do that?
I haven't. I'm familiar with it though. I've heard of it.
Yeah. I really
There's
like
so much good stuff. That's really the whole reason I started my podcast about veteran entrepreneurship. Was that as I was coming out and I was getting my master's in entrepreneurship from Oklahoma State, and I was learning all this cool stuff that was out there. I'm like, I had no idea how many cool programs and stuff that were out there for veterans to transition into entrepreneurship, and all these other programs for veterans, help veterans with all these other things too. I had no idea that stuff existed. And I'm thinking, if I didn't know this stuff existed, I bet you there's a lot of other people that don't know about it too. And that's really where the whole idea from my podcast came. I'm like, I'm just going to feature the people, programs, and resources to help the veteran community, not just veterans, but I have a lot of military spouses on there too, help them find those resources they're looking for. They're out there. You just got to look for them.
Yes. I love what you do. You're teaching people the playing field.
Yeah.
And then you're able to make an informed decision about where you want to play. And that's like
Mm-hmm.
me when people come to me and ask me about becoming a financial coach and starting a business. That's the first place I start with is how I make money. So you understand the different ways you can make money. Because if not, you would be a volunteer. You're coming to me because you're trying to make money. And
Yeah.
so explaining these are the ways to make money and these are all the positions that you could potentially play. And then this is the field and this is where everybody sits on the field. And I feel like if somebody had explained that to me years ago, I would have
Mm-hmm.
had a huge step forward to be like, all right, I can rule out these positions. I don't want anything.
Yeah.
Instead of me like testing everything out, you can just jump right into the two or three that you want to give a shot.
Right. And I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of us make when we jump into an entrepreneurial idea is how are you actually going to monetize it? Like some of us don't even think about that. Um, and of course, the reason that's important is because it's not really sustainable unless you make money at some point, right?
Yep.
So, but a lot of us think it through backwards. There's so many good businesses and business opportunities out there, but a lot of them are not sexy. A lot of them are not the coolest new iPhone idea. Some of them are running an HVAC company, being an electrician on your own.
That's good money though. That is
Yeah,
good money.
and there's big demand for it. Like a lot of folks, we come up with these crazy harebrained entrepreneurial ideas. Nobody's looking for that. No one's going to buy that. They don't care, no matter how good the idea is. But people are going to care when their air conditioner goes out. There's always going to be demand for that. People care when they got a leak in pipe on a Friday night. I mean, they care about that stuff. And one of my favorite stories was there was this Marine a Marine reservist up in New York. He got out of his reserve unit after coming back from Iraq. He started a lawn mowing business, but he went out. A few months into it, he figured out he could get military contracts mowing grass. He was actually mowing grass on the airfield where his reserve unit was at. Some of his buddies were like, "What's the matter, man? Is the first sergeant mad at you? Why are you mowing the grass?" And he's like, "No, man, I got the government contract now." He started making over $4 million a year mowing yards because he got all these great government contracts. So it was the execution. What do you do for a living? Well, I mow yards. Yeah, but the execution was phenomenal and a
Yes.
lot of money. So keep that in mind. You don't have to come up with the latest and greatest harebrained idea to become a successful business owner.
That is a really good point. I'm so glad you said that because you're right. Some people think like I have to be fancy. And I feel
Mm-mm.
like that has led to a lot of my success is I keep it super simple.
Yeah,
That's the way I like it. That especially when it comes to money, we don't need to complicate it. Let's keep it nice and simple. We don't have to get fancy with words. We don't
yeah.
have to get fancy with how we're going to do things. Some basic things can help you find success. And you're right, in entrepreneurship, the same thing applies.
Like in your financial counseling, like, do you ever start with, okay, here's the basics of properly managing your finances. Don't spend more than you make.
Yes,
Oh, I
yes,
never really thought of that.
yes. It's sometimes harder to do than it is to say, but
Yeah.
yes, I think when we're looking at people, when I coach other financial coaches that are trying to start their own business, is I go straight to it. Why would somebody hire you over me? I could tell you how I would separate myself from you if we were both competing for the same client. But what are you going to do to separate yourself from me? And so people have to start thinking about like what is unique about you. And this guy, I mow lawns, but I mow him for the Department of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I have this contract, and that's what's setting him apart from a guy that's like, well, I just do the Chick-fil-A yard. Yes, that's awesome too. But then there's a person, I only do residential. So you have to have your
Mm-hmm.
niche or your specialty. And that
Sure.
guy probably knows contracts back and forth now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He went to the SBA and started reading in their library about how to apply for government contracts. And he had some SBA folks in the office helping him out. He just figured it out on his own with a little bit of help.
I love that dude. I don't know him, but I love him. I think that's really awesome.
Forget what his name is. He became the New York area SBA Small Business Owner of the Year or something like that. It was pretty cool.
He should if he was hanging out in their office
Yeah.
all the time. I'm gonna look up that show. I'll try to put it in the links if I
Okay.
grab it. Cool.
Yeah, I wish I could remember his name. I'll try to remember it.
Oh, I'll cyber stalk it. I'll find it. Don't you worry. All right, I want to ask you because my brother's a pilot, and I know going from being on active duty to becoming a pilot for the airlines, there's a process. If somebody
Yes.
is thinking about, they or maybe you're just getting into the military and they're flying, but one day they're going to get out of the military, one way or the other, they're getting out.
Mhm.
So how can they start? What should they know, and when should they start making this plan? Because I feel like it needs to go way out, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, like most things, you can never start planning too far in advance. So if you know that's something that you're going to go into, you need to start getting everything in order from the very beginning. Um, even the simple things like making sure your logbooks are properly maintained, start creating that folder of every award and all your good information and collect it and have it in a binder. Might come in handy in an interview or something if it comes up. I know most things are very electronic now, but um, build the qualifications that you need to build while you're in the military and you're flying. That's the best flying you're ever going to get. And if depending on what kind of a pilot, like what kind of aircraft you're flying, like me, being mostly a helicopter pilot, I made sure I had my fixed wing ratings all set with the FAA when I came out of flight school, even though I was going to fly helicopters. And then I went and got some additional fixed wing ratings while I was still in the military. I started building some fixed wing multi engine time while I was still in the military, even though I was flying helicopters. And I was able to get a fixed wing flying job right out of the military at a regional airline. And then, because the hiring was kind of tight at that time. And then within 3 years, like I said, I'd gotten hired at the major airline. Unfortunately, it was about 5 months before September 11th. So
Yeah.
that all kind of came to a quick halt. But get your time, get your things in order while you're in the military. And then, most importantly, you know how they say the three most important things in real estate are location, location, location. Well, in getting a job, and this works the same for getting an airline job, the three most important things for finding a job are networking, networking, networking. Trying to get that
Yes.
on camera.
Yeah. Got it.
And a lot of military folks, they might have a good military network built up because that's what they do. It's where they're working. You got to be intentional about building your network outside the military. Follow people that have gotten out in front of you and try to maintain those networks and those relationships, because the guy that's a year or two in front of you that just got hired at American or United or Delta, that's your best in for you getting hired wherever they got hired.
Yeah.
So you've got to maintain those relationships and reach out to people and make contact with them, ask for letters of recommendation. You got to figure out how each airline does that kind of thing and know how it's done. And then you get like a letter of recommendation. What do you think of when somebody asks you for a letter of recommendation? I'm kind of like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to spend a couple hours because if I'm going to do it, I got to do it right. So I'm going to
Right.
spend a couple hours massaging it. What I would do,
Write it.
I would write it for them as if they were writing it. I'd even put their name on it. I'd say, here's the hard copy. You can just sign it. Here's the thumb drive, or you email them the file and say, here's the electronic file if you want to change it at all. So in all the years of trying to get letters of recommendation to get hired at the airlines, every person I did that with, not one person ever changed a thing. They just signed the one I gave them because you make it easy for them.
Right.
And all they got to do is sign it, send it back to you. It's done. But when you ask for a letter of recommendation,
Yeah.
some the good people will produce one for you. But you got to understand those are painful things to produce for people. So give them the information, make it easy for them to do it.
Right. But that's a really good point, because sometimes it's been a while since you worked with them and they
Mm-hmm.
may not remember the nuances of you.
Yeah, they may
Instead
not
of,
know. They may not know what you want to stress on the letter.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just make it easy for them.
I love that. That's a really good point. The networking is so important,
Mm-hmm.
because that's, people that maybe have come through my course or people that I coach or help. Those are the first people I tell when I hear something like a job or an opportunity. So it is your network that usually you tell about something first. It might go out further after that. I'll do a tweet or I'll put it on LinkedIn, but really it's going in emails to people that I know personally before I put it out publicly, because they've
Yeah,
networked with me. So I
like
totally agree.
networking is like here. A lot of people have a misconception about networking. And I used to be the same way. Like I used to think, oh, I want to go to this conference or this meeting because this one guy's going to be there and I want to get to know him. Maybe he'll give me a job. Okay, that's not what networking is.
Right.
Uh, to use an analogy, networking is like faith. Call it blind faith. You have to believe that it just works without actually having proof that it works,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it takes years to prove to somebody that networking works, but eventually it will prove itself. Like I could give you 20 stories about how I had networked and got to know people really well. And years later, I bump into somebody that I kind of met through an event or something, and that person turns out to be crucial to something I'm working on or something I needed or whatever. And and I always, and networking goes both ways. You got to help other people that are looking for connections and helping. I love connecting people. Like if I meet somebody that's got an issue or interested in something, I'm like, oh, you need to meet this guy. They better help you out. This gal is doing the exact same thing you're doing right now. You guys need to talk. I do that all the time. I love doing that. And so when you do that, when you do that yourself, it's real easy to call somebody up or send somebody an email and ask for a favor. And that's what networking is all about. You do it as much as you can, not ever really knowing how it's going to pay off, but you got to have faith that it will pay off.
Right. Well, and two, you don't forget. Like, for
Mhm.
example, you definitely hooked me up with an awesome interview, and other people have done great things for me like that too. And it's like you don't forget. So it's like, how can I one day pay that back?
Yeah.
It's like you're waiting for the opportunity to be able to get solid, because you
Hmm.
really appreciated that act of kindness. And that really, I think, is what networking is. It's acts of kindness. I still
Oh
can't
yeah.
talk.
And people got to remember that the person that helps you out and then finds out a year later how this job worked out great for you or something, and they helped you get the job, that makes that person feel really good. So they got a lot out of helping you. That and a lot of us get out of the military. We don't want to ask for help because we think we're bothering people. People want nothing more than to help you.
Yeah.
They don't know what you need help with, and they don't even know you need help. But when you come and ask them and give them a proposition or tell them what you're looking for, some people may not be able to help you, but the ones that can, they'll help you.
Yes. And I like
Absolutely.
to remind people that I'm a grown woman. I'll let you know if I can't do it.
Right.
I'll let you know if I'm too busy, or I'll let you know the timetable when I can get back to you. So
Hmm.
you don't need to kind of try to read my mind and what I want. Just ask me and I'll let you know. I'll tell you straight up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that that really is important. But in talking, I don't know who said this quote, maybe you remember, but begin with the end in mind. Is that Simon something?
I believe I'm not sure. That's definitely in his book. I'm not sure if he coined that one, but yeah. But like in the military, it's same concept. It's objective area planning, and then you work backwards from your objective area.
Right.
That's mission planning. You begin with the end in mind.
I think that everybody should think about that when they come on active duty or join the reserves, like begin
Hmm.
with the end in mind. Like you're starting this career in the military, but what happens at the end? What are you
Right.
going to do? Are you going to go into your career field that you're in active duty, or are you going to go into something completely different? Are you going into entrepreneurship? So I think that that is something more people should be present with that decision.
Right. And sometimes folks in the military, they feel like maybe they're cheating on their service or something if they're thinking about what they're doing when they get out. But that's not really the case at all. You're doing your service, you're doing your service a better service by becoming a productive, successful citizen after you get out, because now you are your service's success story. You're a great recruiting tool because you went in the Marine Corps for 4 years, got out, and now you're successful. Or you were in the Air Force for 10 years, now you got out, now you're successful. Those are great recruiting stories. Those are great recruiting efforts. So you're doing everybody good by getting out and becoming a productive, successful citizen of society. So don't think for a second that you can't think about post service life while you're still in.
Right. You're not. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. I was gonna say that in your example too of getting all of your fixed wing, those things taken care of before you come off of active duty, I would think that that makes you even more valuable while you serve because you're more
Mhm.
well-rounded. You have a lot more experience. If you keep volunteering for these courses or whatever it is,
Mhm.
certifications, that is going to help you be a better service member, but also going to make you much more marketable when you get out.
Absolutely. And whether if you're going to conferences and learning about business or entrepreneurship or whatever your interest may be, that often so many times that helped me be a better officer in the Marine Corps because I had more skills. I learned skills out in the civilian sector and I'd bring them back into the military and use them in work, whether they were even leadership. The military doesn't have a monopoly on leadership. There's a lot of great civilian leadership out there too. So the more well-rounded experience you get as you go along, the more valuable of an individual you'll be, and you can either provide that value to your service while you're still in the military, or put it to work after you get out.
That's a good segue to my next question is for people on active duty that want to get into entrepreneurship after they serve, and it might be after 8 years, 20 years, whatever it is, what do you think that they should be doing? Where should they start? Is it conferences like you said, or is it just networking veterati with people that are entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, don't wait. Like you got to get started on something right now. Now, maybe you don't want to start your business right now, but at the very least, you need to be reading business books, entrepreneurship books, any books you can get your hand on. Those are all freebies. And if you don't like to read, or if you don't have the time to read, then get them, get Audible and listen to you on your commute to and from work. I mean, that's how I grew my love for podcasting, driving in the car. So gain knowledge and learn all that stuff as much as you can. And in doing that, you're going to discover conferences that may be going on that you might want to take some leave and go travel to a conference and just get a different perspective on what's out there and what you're going to be entering into when you do get out. So I love going to like different kind of conferences and stuff. Like we mentioned, we were at PodFest last year in Orlando, podcasting conferences, entrepreneurship conferences. We go to Amazon conferences all the time. So get out there and get as much exposure to that stuff as you possibly can, and start building that network. And like, if you might be like me, like I just love the concept of entrepreneurship, but I didn't really have that idea. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. Well, that helps you come up with ideas. The more exposure you get at conferences, the more cool businesses you find out there that people are running. And that's another idea. You could volunteer to help a budding entrepreneur that you meet at one of these conferences. Like, hey man, I'll help you out. I'm good at this. I can help you in your business, and work in a startup, work in an entrepreneurial venture, even if you're doing it for free, to see how things work. And I mean, if you could get in on even if you're working for free, get in on something while you're still in the military to help somebody else build their business, helps tremendously. I mean, that's a valuable education to get if you can be in it, and you're not really risking anything except your time. Don't have to risk any of your money at that point.
Also, too, that you don't have to have the responsibility of mistakes. You could still learn from them because you were immersed in it, but you didn't have any money on the line or your name on the line, because I mean, when you start a business, your name's on the line a lot. So that's a really good point. I've done a lot of that. I've volunteered, and some people think I'm crazy, but I've volunteered to work or to do presentations, or I've worked at different jobs just with the sole purpose of I was trying to understand how it worked. And then I was able to take that knowledge and put it back into my business and like into freelance writing. Like I didn't know when I started that as a financial expert, you can make, $300,000 a year just freelance writing. Like that's crazy to me. But you don't even have to talk to people. You could just write at your house and make that kind of money. So I totally agree.
I forget what her name is again. I've had almost 400 episodes, but there's an Air Force gal. Now her husband's still in the Air Force, so she's out. She's a military spouse. She has over 1,000 publications, different workbooks, advice books. She has a book on how to do a PCS, things like that. And she has even full-blown books and series of big stuff that she's written, but a lot of really practical. I forget what they call that, like low content stuff, which means like a workbook would have a few words on each page and then a bunch of lines where you fill in your stuff. Like a PCS booklet would be list all your utilities that you're going to have to shut off. So it's mostly a blank page, but it's still a workbook that people would buy. They pay $5 or $10 for. She
Right.
has over 1,000 different publications, and she sells it all electronically on Amazon. That's how
That's
she makes her
awesome.
living. Yeah, it's
That's
crazy.
awesome. But that's also kudos to the military community. Like, just we want to make money. We're going to figure it out. Like, I got to move
Mhm.
all the time. I got to, deal with deployments, but I could still figure a way out to make money and be with my family. And so I think that's what's really cool is that, we'll work around it.
Absolutely. There will be a way. We'll find it.
Right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I could talk to you all day. You know that. I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you tell everybody watching where they can learn more about you and what you're up to?
So main spot would be veteranonthemove.com. You could start there. Mostly what I do is the podcast. So you can find the Veteran on the Move podcast anywhere on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere, Google Podcasts, anywhere that podcasts are found, you can find Veteran on the Move there. And then we've also got the Veteran on the Move Facebook group. We've got a page on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter also.
Okay, yes. So everybody check it out and definitely check out this show. I really appreciate you being on, Joe. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks, Lacey. It was awesome. Enjoyed it.
All right. I also want to say thank you to Self for the work they do to help others build credit and savings. To learn more about Self and their credit builder accounts, you can go to Self.inc. You can also find links to find and follow me, Joe, and Self. I'm going to put them in the links below on social media. And if you haven't registered, don't forget, I'm giving away a $100 gift card to Walmart. Check that out. And be sure to tune in to Live with Lacey on Monday, where I'll be starting the week talking all things investing, saving, and planning for retirement. My guests will be Katie Cannon, Daniel Kopp, and links in social media. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you Monday.